Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Tuesday, April 19th, and the markets are headed back in the right direction after a scary couple of days there. We've got Bitcoin, moving up above 41K, ETH, moving above 3,100, making some really nice moves this morning. Also, traditional equities moving in the right direction as well. But what's interesting is that the 10-year still making, new local highs. That is not slowing down the market today, though. We'll break that down and a whole lot more before we get started. CJ, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing well, and interesting to see some folks excited about the market. Always good stuff there, John. Appreciate the participation, my man. But yeah, today I want to show some charts and talk about some inverse correlations and where capital flows are going, and whether or not we are at the start of a potential tone change or shift in the market. We talked about sentiment being overwhelmingly bearish yesterday, and typically markets have a way of punishing the majority, especially when it comes to BTC. So excited to get into a lot of those charts and more. Also, I want to talk about Neon, which is building out Solana's EVM compatible layer. They're launching a governance token, should be at the end of June. And anybody knows who has been on MetaMask or has used various EVM chains, whether it be Avalanche or others. It's very, very important because it allows developers to migrate or port their projects over from Ethereum, and then users of MetaMask or Ethereum can then just jump right in. And so excited to talk about that and much more, but a lot going on overall. Monty, how you doing, my friend?
Doing well, CJ, doing well. Got some of the usual suspects on the move today as well. Luna, huge day yesterday, absolutely resilient into the market weakness, and then really, looked impressive last night. Same with Near Protocol, but also we have some interesting news around Sandbox that is on the move today as well after another funding round, a $400 million funding round, giving them a $4 billion valuation. So that thing's on the move today as well. So plenty to talk about. Excited to take a look at some of those charts. I've got some as well. But you want to get us started?
400 million. Okay, they can't mess it up now.
I know, right here. Yeah, let's start with that. Why not? Because that is a staggering number. We've talked about this in the past, about how these metaverse plays have some very lofty valuations, but that is rooted in solid funding. That's seen here from the Sandbox, raising 400 million, giving them a $4 billion valuation. And the Sandbox is one of the largest metaverses in terms of market cap. It also has lots of participation from not only individuals that are looking to engage with the metaverse, but also brands and businesses. They have extensive partnerships with various retail brands, including Nike and many others, and also have been making various plays with esports and play to earn sections as well. So Sandbox has been making a move. It's obviously a more blue chip metaverse play in the sense that it's been around for quite a while, but as you can see today, outperforming the market, making a move back above $3. And this is, on the back of that massive funding round, giving them a $4 billion valuation. So congrats to any sand holders. Really impressive movements this morning on the back of that funding round, but definitely worth keeping an eye on that one to see exactly what they do with that funding and how that project continues to grow.
Awesome. Thank you for that, sir. Yeah, before getting into the charts, now that we are on the subject of news, I want to bring up or talk a little bit about Neon and some of the interesting things going on for Solana right now, and why I am pretty bullish on this asset if the market is truly going into a new tone change or bullish uptrend, relief rally, whatever you want to call it. So as I had mentioned, Neon has been working on an EVM compatible layer for Solana for quite a while now, ever since 2021. And this governance token, ultimately what will be used as the equivalent of gas for the EVM layer on Solana. You'll need that in order to transact and to do different things. Also, it's interesting that the Neon EVM has actually been able to achieve, or at least has planned to achieve, 4,500 transactions per second, whereas the Ethereum EVM is pretty much limited to 300 in a lot of its current implementations. So that's going to be interesting, and we still have yet to see kind of the effects of that, what type of applications could differ, and what is truly capable and possible on an EVM layer with that type of throughput. So it'll be really interesting to see. But what I think you guys would be most interested in is the governance token. And typically, what will happen is you'll see a launch in late June potentially, whenever it comes out, and it'll probably be like ApeCoin. So this is definitely something you want to be on and have your eye on the ball, because you could see a listing and then a run up of 50% or something of that sort. We really don't know. But this is a really important project launching for Solana, and should bring a lot of really interesting capabilities to the ecosystem. Because now you've basically been limited in terms of developers to the programming language of Rust, whereas now this will bring in Solidity and allow for that Ethereum compatibility, which is really cool. So keep an eye on that one, and yeah, without further ado, we can get to the charts as well if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do it. I think that's a great starting point there. We'll keep an eye on Neon for sure. One thing I do want to start off here, and I think this is a pretty good place to start. And John's pretty excited about it in the chat, and I think for good reason, and that is Ethereum. ETH is making a really nice move this morning, and let's take a look at that because it is breaking above some critical levels here. So, just taking a look at the daily chart for ETH, one thing that you'll notice here is that this is the 20-period smooth moving average, and this did mark a strong level of resistance over the last couple of days. We struggled to get above this level, although ETH didn't really pull back as hard as some other assets over the last few days. It actually really held its own just below the 3K level. A lot of people had concerns that if we breached the 3K level, we would be headed straight back down to retest 2,500, but that actually was not the case. We saw some significant buy pressure come in, and just like that, we're back above this 20-period smooth moving average. And the reason why I want to point this out is because, with the exception of a few fake outs, this 20-period smooth moving average is a great mark of when an asset is starting to trend, and then it becomes a good indication of support and resistance during those trends. So, obviously we've had a few fake outs, but those were during, different market conditions when we were kind of trending down and bouncing up. You can see that happened a few times on the way down, but ultimately this did mark a level of resistance when we were trending down. But the same thing can be said for the way up. It did kind of mark a level of support. We came down to retest it on a few different occasions, only really breaking it once before trending higher. So, now that we have it looks like we've bottomed out here. We made this really nice move above the 20-period smooth moving average just in the middle of last month. And that really allowed us to run from, 2,700 all the way up to 3,500 with little to no pullbacks during this period of time. So now that we're putting this level below us, I think that's something to watch. I definitely want to see ETH close above that level today. It's essentially marked by about 3,100 exactly, or just below that, 3,080. If we can close above that and continue to grind above the 20-period smooth moving average, I think we could plausibly see a continuation of this sort of price action where we are trending in the right direction. Now, one thing to watch out for, and this is common when we get a moving average below us that was formerly resistance, is this sort of retest and validation of this level. So, now that we're getting above this level, one way you can play it is, enter directly as we break above it, or wait for a retest like we saw here on March 20th, where we came back down, pulled back, retested, validated this level as support before climbing higher. I think that's something we could see here over the next couple of days. But for the meantime, we're trending in the right direction, headed above that level. And that to me is very encouraging. So I think it's worth keeping an eye on ETH today, worth keeping an eye on the daily candle close, because closing above that 20-period smooth moving average is very important and has been historically. So that's what I'm seeing for ETH. I'm excited as well, John. I hope that provided some technical insight for you there. But CJ, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Monty. Good stuff as always. Yeah, like I had mentioned earlier, I want to talk a little bit about the flow of capital, not only just within the crypto space, but moreover in the equity space and just globally. Because if you think about it, all markets are really just one massive pool of capital or liquidity, and it's just constantly moving and shifting between different asset classes and going from incompetent traders to more skilled traders over time. But I think something that's really interesting and very ubiquitous in the space is that we're seeing basically buy signals or bottom signals on many risk assets. This is not just true of Bitcoin, it's also true of the NASDAQ, the Qs, ARK, and some other assets we'll look at in just a moment. And then when you look at the risk on or the risk off assets, namely the DXY, 10-year yields, they're all approaching very strong resistance levels and showing the inverse signs of what we're seeing on the risk assets. So I think that is indicative of a potential regime change in terms of sentiment and as well as price action. We've been going down and really getting sold into very heavily throughout the past week and really over the past month, if you think about it from a more macro perspective. But just seeing Bitcoin here and taking a look at some of the technicals on the 4-hour chart, you have this bullish divergence within the RSI. Obviously, you have the TD by 9, and you have the bullish hammer candle yesterday that really confirmed our third to fourth consecutive higher low in this overall trend, which is very constructive from the bullish perspective. And I think a lot of the bears, if you were to be honest with yourself and just invert the chart and say, oh, well, would you short this? All the bears would be saying, yeah, short it to zero. It's a massive descending triangle. But there's so much sidelined capital that you're still going to see that cope, in my opinion. But interestingly enough, nice to see those confirmed higher highs and higher lows. And now it's time to go to some of the other risk on assets, namely ARK as well as NASDAQ. And when you look at it, we are lining up at similar levels. We're bouncing from the TD by 9, getting a bullish engulfing candle at the bottom of a downtrend off of local support. And then the more promising thing, I think, for the bullish case is this is the potential to turn into kind of an inverse head and shoulders pattern if we truly can rally from these levels. And we're seeing very similar things from a technical perspective across a lot of the risk assets. ARK obviously been beat down a lot harder over the last couple weeks, but still recording that TD by 9 just a few days ago and now bouncing up 3% today. Same story in the Qs. Pretty ubiquitous when it comes to these buy 9s and what we've seen over the past couple days. But, these are bottoming signals for the risk assets. And then when you go to the risk off assets like the DXY, in other words, investors going into cash, you see the opposite, which is quite interesting. You see a TD sell 9 and an asset that is getting severely overextended. You have a bearish kind of spinning top candle at the top of an uptrend. Haven't seen weakness yet. However, if you were riding this trend for quite a while, I would be completely content taking profit here at 100. Not only are we reaching that, TD sell 9 level, but we're also reaching a multi-year resistance level going back roughly all the way to 2015. Could we break through and go straight to 110 or 103? Sure. However, I don't think the technicals currently are lining up for it. I think even if we were to go above 100, we'd likely see a pullback or profit taking in the interim. So when you look at that inverse relationship between a lot of these assets, including yields being at that TD sequential sell 9, as well as like multi-year resistance, as you can see, going back towards 2018, it's just a good time to take profit if you're along a lot of these assets. So what does that mean, in my opinion? I think that means a rotation, at least in the short term, back into some of these risk-on assets like crypto, like ARK, like the NASDAQ. And so we will see if that comes to fruition. I think also when you pair it with the most bearish sentiment we've had in 30 years, that's something to pay attention to and take note of. But yeah, just my thoughts on the overall market there.
Yeah, definitely worth taking note of because that inverse relationship between the risk off and risk on assets has really been a defining factor in this market over the last couple of weeks here. And I think one of the most unique things about today's price action is that we have the risk on assets moving like Bitcoin, but we also have the 10-year continuing to climb higher. I think that could be partially explained by the fact that, like you just pointed out, it's showing signs that, the risk on assets are oversold, and, the DXY and the TNX are overbought. People may be anticipating a reversal. And, I personally am as well. It does look like the DXY is, starting to top, and, people are looking like they're ready to pour some of that sideline capital into the more risk on assets. So excited for that. But yeah, I think that's all we got. Anything else you want to add here before we wrap up today's episode?
Interesting question. Appreciate it. Would you consider ETH a leader in the uptrend versus BTC? Your thoughts? Thank you. I think BTC is typically the leader, although that's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of ambiguous because like ETH will outperform just based on beta, and like it's likely it's always outperformed Bitcoin just because of its lower market cap and less liquidity. So you just have more capital flows going into it because the market is slightly smaller. But I think when you talk about the ETH burn and everything that's going on to lead it to the path towards deflation, there's much reason to believe that ETH will outperform Bitcoin, by a lot. And that depends a lot on institutional adoption. But if we see institutional adoption of Ethereum, especially for staking after the merge, when yields double from roughly 4 to 5 to 9 to 10, you might see a flipping, but I think we're still a long ways away. And it's tough to say whether one leads the other. The market kind of just moves in unison for the most part.
Yeah, that's just what we've seen historically. When Bitcoin moves, it tends to bring the rest of the market with it. You hinted at that kind of flow of capital model a little bit earlier, but that's just what we've seen historically, is that without Bitcoin, moving in the right direction, ETH doesn't typically, show signs of independent strength, especially not, in early in the market cycle like this. Perhaps later in the market cycle, but right now, I still think we need Bitcoin to, kind of climb back up, reclaim new all-time highs for a lot of these other assets to make new all-time highs as well. So I don't think necessarily ETH can be a leader, but that being said, it is seeing very favorable technicals, very favorable signs of supply absorption below 3K. And like CJ hinted at, it has some very interesting upgrades coming in the form of ETH 2.0. So lots to watch out for there.
Gold is another one down like 1% today. I wonder what silver's doing, because they'd been on a nice run, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, both down today. So I think that, commodities could be telling you something right there. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a great day in the world wherever you're at, even if you're in Chicago, like with Monty, and it's snowing. Love that comment, by the way. But if you guys enjoyed what you saw here today and would like more of our insights, please visit the link in the description below at markrebellion.com/trycrypto. And please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content today. But overall, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.